Hey folks, you're listening to episode 26 of the Deeply Devoted Podcast, a ministry of the E-Free Church of Bemidji, Minnesota. My name is Eric Nygren, and I am one of the pastors on staff here at E-Free Bemidji. On a Sunday morning, we might only have 4 to 5 minutes to hear someone share how they came to faith, a little bit of their story of how they came to know the Lord. But here on the podcast, when we do these Testimony Tuesday episodes, we've got really all the time we need to get to know someone and to hear a little bit about their journey of faith. And that's what we're going to do on this episode today. Well, today on the podcast, I've invited Rachel Eastling to be my guest here in the Deeply Devoted Podcast studio. We are going to talk a little bit about her faith, get to know Rachel a little bit. So let's just get right to it. Rachel, welcome to the podcast. Now, Rachel, so I want to kind of start in, get to know you a little bit here, let others kind of get to know you. Have you had a chance to listen to our church podcast yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
No. I wanted to listen to it, but I just haven't had a chance.
You're a busy student, that's okay. But are you someone that listens to podcasts, or what do you like to do when you've got some free time and you're not studying?
Sometimes I'll listen to some podcasts, like if my friends recommend something, whether it's like a little bit of a sermon or something like that.
Yeah.
I like listening to those occasionally. Otherwise, reading or drawing takes up my free time.
Okay. Do you have things you prefer? Are you a fiction reader, a nonfiction reader? What's
fiction and fantasy?
Okay.
Yeah.
What would be your go-to recommendation right now, or that you'd say, boy, you got to read this?
I like Chuck Black books.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm currently reading through the Kingdom series.
Okay.
It's like a fantasy version or like medieval version of the telling throughout from Genesis to Revelation.
Oh.
And I've read through it before, but I'm currently rereading it.
Okay. Is it better the second time you reread, or are you picking things up you missed the first time?
Yeah, it's interesting, like picking up new details as you reread it. Yeah.
Oh, cool. All right. Good. So yeah, when you do get free time, I'm sure as a student, and you like to draw as well.
Yep, drawing and writing and working on stories.
Okay,
yeah.
Excellent. So we're going to see something published someday with your name on it, or
hopefully.
Okay, that'll be good. All right. Well, we'll line up to be your first customers whenever that happens. So. Well, Rachel, some of our folks know you here at the church, but maybe some of the folks that are newer to our church don't know you, haven't met you yet. But other than seeing you on a Sunday morning here at our church, where would folks bump into you in Bemidji during the week, and kind of what keeps you busy the rest of the week when you're not here on a Sunday?
I'm mostly at college, at Oak Hills Christian College. I got classes like Monday through Thursday. Otherwise, I'm working at Lucan's.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I've seen you over there. Do you want to share what department you work in so people can come say hi?
I work in popcorn.
Yeah, that's a popular place. So,
oh yeah.
Yeah, you're probably between that and the caribou counter. Those are probably the two most popular places in the grocery store. So
yeah,
all
it's
right.
fun seeing people.
Yeah. Well, good. Yeah. So, and when did you start at Oak Hills, and where are you in your program at this point?
Well, I did PSU in high school a few years back, so I got to know some people then.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm in my second year currently at Oak Hills.
Okay, and you're studying what?
Christian ministry with emphasis of worship arts.
Okay, very good. Very good. Rachel, it seems like a long way ago now, when we think back to last fall, but you probably remember around here we had our big 100th anniversary celebration. I don't think we're doing 101st. I think we'll probably wait a few years to do another one. It was wonderful, but it was a lot of work. But one of the things that came out of that 100th anniversary was there's some families in our church that have been a part of E-Free Bemidji for quite some time, and your family is one of them. And so I'm kind of curious, Rachel, do you have any like early memories from this church? And if you have maybe a story or two about maybe some of the highlights of growing up in this church.
I think one of my earliest memories is like from first grade. I had a really sweet first grade teacher, like Sunday school teacher. She was this old lady, super sweet, loved on all the kids. I still have a manger scene that she gave me, like when I moved up to second grade. Otherwise, like kids' church, I remember having like box forts that we would say. Those were fun. And quite a few memories from youth group too.
I'm sure. Yeah. Probably some really neat things that have happened over the year. Probably a good mixture of the fun and silly and the more serious and spiritual, I'm sure. Yeah. So is it different now that you're not in first grade anymore? You're a long way off that. How does that feel now that you're still part of the same church family that you were when you were a little kid?
It's interesting, kind of like going into it as an adult now, like going to church and stuff.
Yeah.
It's nice because I know a lot of people. I've been trying to get out and talk to more people as Sundays come along or as I see people throughout the week. It's cool seeing like how God has used my friends too, like throughout the years. I still know people that I'd met in first grade. Like I still see them around and I still talk to them and hang out with them. So it's pretty fun. Yeah,
some pretty meaningful connections that have been that have lasted for quite some time. Yeah. And you've gone through a lot of things together. Yeah, that's cool. Well, we're here on this episode to talk a little bit about testimony, which kind of is a little bit of a churchy word. I think around the church we understand what a testimony is, but it's your faith story. It's the how you came to faith and a little bit about what the Lord's been doing since then. And one of the things I remind people about, whether it's on the podcast or if I'm teaching a class on how to write your testimony, is that all of our stories are very different. If I were to share my story, it's going to be different from your story, and it'd be different from another person. And maybe there's some unique or there's some similar elements to each of our stories, but most of it's fairly unique. And and I've heard a lot of people over the years share their testimony, their story, and it seems that there's a bunch of people who their story is they came to faith early in their life. And then there's others that maybe came to faith at a later point in life. And so, Rachel, as we get to know you a little bit, when do you think you first heard the gospel? And maybe even when did it start to make sense to you?
Well, I don't remember not hearing about the gospel because I grew up in the church and at camp and all that.
Right.
The first time, like the time where I remember making a decision was like I was 4 years old. My mom was reading me the story of Noah. Other than that, don't remember much. Otherwise, when it first kind of started to make a little more sense was probably my first year in middle school when I was at camp.
Okay.
Dan Hubbard was the speaker, and the way he describes things, I'm a very visual, like when I hear things described, I try to like visualize it in my head.
Yeah.
And when he described like just the way he described Jesus on the cross and like taking up the cross and taking all our sins and like I could almost see Jesus's face. And I just kind of like broke down, and that's kind of when I rededicated.
Okay.
And decided to like fully give my life to Christ.
Yeah.
So that was very impactful.
Okay, so that was in middle school then. Okay, yeah. And that makes sense. That I think for a lot of people that maybe, like you said, I like how you said that I can't think of a time when I haven't heard the gospel or that it was new. It was just part of your life, your family life, your church life early on. But as you got older, that maybe it started to make more sense. Or to kind of. I love that, just a visual of the gospel there. And Rachel, as you've matured then in your walk with the Lord, one of the things that is often part of our story is not just how we've grown spiritually, but sometimes along the way we're challenged in our faith. There's maybe it's an event or maybe a season of life where we felt challenged. Rachel, does that resonate with you at all? Can you think about times maybe in your life where you felt that you felt a little bit challenged in your faith, and if so, how did you navigate maybe those questions or that season of challenge?
I think the older I've gotten, the more harder it is to like the more you learn about, and so then the more you have to like deal with, I guess.
Yeah.
I think one of the hardest parts in my life was probably when I lost 3 of my family members, like 2 of my grandparents and stuff. Especially after I lost my grandpa, I really started like questioning like why God would let these things happen.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I talked to my dad, and he pointed me towards like some of the Psalms where David was asking like, God, why are you letting this happen? Why do you let this suffering? But like at the beginning and end of every single Psalm, there was praise. So David's like, I praise you, Lord. You're good. I'm going through this, but I still praise you.
Yeah.
And so that was really cool. And I'm really thankful for my parents to like point me in that direction.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Otherwise, there's been a few times where like I'll be sorry.
Yeah.
I'll be going through some stuff and I want to tell someone about it, but I didn't have the courage to. And there was one time in high school at youth group, I was like going through some stuff, and it's like, God, I really want to tell someone, but I don't know how. And then it was just a random Wednesday. Like one of my friends brought up, hey, I'm struggling with this. Canvas of prayer. And it was the exact same or like very similar to what I was going through. And then another person spoke up like, hey, I'm struggling with the same thing. And then I was able to speak up and be like, hey, me too.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. Just like they came alongside me, gave me like tips on how to like go through it, how to process it. We prayed for each other, checked in weekly. It was like really encouraging. And then there was another point just last year. I've been struggling with some stuff, and God brought together just this group of random college students. We hardly knew each other. But we started like a prayer night, and then that turned into a little small group of our own.
Okay.
And eventually like we opened up and we found out we were all struggling with the same thing again. And hardly knew each other, but we're completely open with each other. And as soon as we all found that out, it was like this whole new connection.
Yeah.
And like we still like even today, like they're my closest friends at the college.
Wow.
Like they mean so much to me.
Yeah.
And they already know my darkest parts. They know what's going on in my life, and they're able to encourage me in that. And it's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And so key to, when whether we're going through a good season of our faith or a tough season, to be surrounded by other believers, to, we can encourage each other when things are going well, and we can even encourage one another when we're in the midst of suffering. And even while everybody's going through a period of suffering there. I appreciate how you turn to the Psalms too. When I look at the Psalms, one of the things that stands out to me, and especially some of those prayers, are how many times the psalmist or David says, God, I know that you hear me. Something like that. And so, yeah, even when we're kind of grumpy and, Lord, I don't know what you're doing, and explain it to me, there's that sense of, at least I know the Lord is listening, and he's a good ear.
I'm actually taking a class on Psalms this semester, and one of our assignments is to read through every psalm and ask like, how is God described, how the author might have felt while reading it, and how can we apply that. And it's been really cool just reading through them and trying to think in that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them, like, God isn't described in like a direct way, but he's still shown as like a provider, a protector.
Yeah.
Like he's the almighty one that's there to like take down the enemy. Like it's cool. It's also cool to see how like the author is like in some ways encouraging himself as well, because he's like, why are you downcast, oh my soul? Why do you do this? God is here.
Yeah.
And so he's like talking to God, but also encouraging himself through that as he's going through it.
Not just kind of giving himself a pep talk, but reminding himself of just the truth of who God is and what he does. Yeah. Okay, so by the end of the term, you're going to be a Psalms expert, and we can come to you with all of our questions on Psalms.
Doubt it.
Okay, something like that. All right. Well, Rachel, as you kind of think back over how the Lord has walked with you, and you've walked with the Lord, as you think back over the years, are there particular people or events that have really shaped your faith? What comes to mind when you think of maybe some of those milestones? You mentioned coming to faith or rededicating at camp and a particular speaker, but other people or events that have really kind of shaped that timeline for you.
My parents have played a big part. They've been good about like training me up in the faith and making sure like we know the Bible, we have things memorized, we go to God. They're really good about that. My grandparents as well have also been very encouraging. Otherwise, like my friends at the college, my youth leaders, when I was at youth group, not at youth group anymore, but now I get to be a youth leader in that. And just, God has brought many people into my life throughout different times, and it's been cool. Just as I'm at different stages, he brings through different people, and then I go back and I talk to those other people that were there at other points, and it's like, hey, this stuff has changed, but I've learned so much throughout the years, and I'm not in that other stage anymore, but I still like, I love talking to you, and I thank you for like being there in my life when I was at that stage.
Yeah. So some key people, and some key relationships that continue to last. Yeah. Well, so we've kind of danced around it a little bit here, but you do have a particular connection to Oak Hills, not just as a student, but to Camp Oak Hills. Rachel, what does camp and camp ministry mean to you?
Well, camp is like a second home. I basically grew up there.
Yeah. It's like the world's biggest backyard.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, wandering through the woods, checking out all the trails.
Yeah.
The staff, like with my dad being there all the time, and my mom helped out too. She's helping out this year, and it's cool. But the staff have always felt like a second family. Like even when I was little, I didn't know any of them. They just came to the house, and I would like jump on their laps, and they'd play with us, and like I have some memories. Interesting. And then as I like got to like starting high school, junior staff all the way through now, like this will be my 8th summer working there.
Wow.
And it's been cool getting to know my peers. So they're not now just my older siblings, like they're my peers, they're like with me, they're my age. And some of them that I worked with my first year, like now we're coming back 8 years later, still working at camp.
Okay.
And it's really cool to see just like how we've grown throughout that. And it's cool now to see also like the new junior staff. I have some of them in my small group, and it's fun seeing them year round, and seeing how they're growing too. And so now I get to like help the younger ones as they're coming in. So that's cool. Yeah.
Does that feel weird that as you sort of look and say that was me a number of years ago, and now I'm on the other end of that?
It's kind of weird because when I was a junior staff, I always thought like the leadership staff for the counselors were like so old, and now I'm on that end now.
And that's you now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good. And it seems like the summer season is a long way off right now when it's negative temperatures and snowy outside, but it's going to sneak up on us sooner than later. And I know there's a lot of getting things ready and getting staff signed up and things like that. So camp is coming, I know. Well, Rachel, as you seek to grow in your faith and strengthen your faith, what are some of the maybe practical ways that you work to strengthen your faith in Christ? What are some things that work for you, and even what doesn't?
One way that I've found that helps is just doing devos in the morning.
Okay. Are you a morning person?
I'm kind of like in the middle.
Okay.
Like I can be a morning person. Like at camp, I have like a mode where it's like, okay, I got to get up early anyways. So,
Right.
but I found that when I do devos in the morning, I like my mood is so much better. Like if I do them in the evening, I just feel off like all day.
Okay.
Otherwise, like music, I love playing piano. I love singing. And so sometimes my time alone with God is just me freehand playing the piano for an hour or two. Like,
Nice.
That is my time with God some days. And it's like, I just feel like I'm in the presence of God as I'm doing that. It's really cool. And it's really fun when people join me too.
Okay.
Like I've had a few times, I've quite a few musically talented friends at the college. And we'll just randomly get together and they'll play their guitar, I'll play piano, we'll just sing harmonies, and it's great.
Kind of a instant jam session and worship session. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really encouraging too, just to see how God brings the campus together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. I don't think there's anything magical about, doing your devotions or your quiet time or whatever you call it first thing in the morning. But I would agree with you, Rachel. I think for me, it's if I front load that on my day, one, I'm more likely actually to do it because I'll get busy during the day and I'll just keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. But yeah, there is something about that, about starting the day with the Lord, and it doesn't have to be 2 hours or anything like that. But
yeah, just a quick 15 minutes sometimes.
Yeah, a good start. So do you use like a devotional? Do you read through a book of the Bible, or what? Or does that change from week to week or month to month? Or
kind of depends,
okay.
I guess. Lately I've been going through Psalms a lot. Some of it's because of class, some of it's because it's one of my favorite books.
Yeah, I'd call that a double dip. You might as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, Mark, I like going through books mostly. Sometimes when I don't feel like just reading, I want like good, solid, like already like I can just read it and get more information. I like doing some devotionals. I have like many devotional books that I've gone through.
Okay.
Some I use on my phone as well with like your version or something like that.
A lot of tools there. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And it's cool to see, because on that as well you can see what other people are reading through, and so sometimes I'll like look into and like read around the verses that some of my friends have highlighted too. Nice. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Well, and you mentioned a minute ago that, not too long ago, you were part of the youth group here. You've since graduated. You've since moved on to the next stage. So now you're in this young adult life stage here. Rachel, how has your faith changed or grown as you've moved from high school student to young adulthood?
It's changed a lot.
Okay.
The year after I graduated, I was busy, and like I was my social life was like work and church. That was all I had. I was in a small group on Wednesdays, but other than that, it was kind of hard. Did not have very much of a community life. But after that, when I started going to college, got back into the community, kind of tried to push myself to get out there and meet new people.
Yep.
And that's helped a lot. I especially being at the college and like digging in the word every single day, like learning new things. Like it's a really good community, and it's helped me to grow a lot in my faith the last couple of years, and like pushed me to do things that I would never feel comfortable doing.
Okay.
Like even doing announcements in the morning. I do not like talking in front of people. And last year I was so nervous my hands were shaking before I did announcements. And this year I'm able to just go up and just do it. I can read off stuff, or I could do it from memory. It's changed a lot.
Okay.
So it's been cool just to see the differences. Yeah.
So not just shaping and forming your faith, but just even shaping and forming who you are as a person and your, Yeah.
I also, for one of my classes, I planned like a chapel, and one of the things was like I had to find a speaker. This is definitely like a God thing. I asked multiple people if they could speak for me, like for the CLH, and a bunch of people were just busy, and so eventually I ended up speaking. And that was the first time I'd ever spoken like a full out message in front of people. I've done devotionals, but even those I struggle with sometimes, like leading it. But like my friends helped me like review what I've been learning, so I dug deep, and I was able to give the message as part of my CLH, and it was cool. Like I was still like, voice was shaking, hands were shaking, like I was so nervous. But it was also just cool to see how God worked through that, because many people many people came up to me and were like, you did really good, like that was really moving, and I'm like, yeah, thanks God.
Yeah.
Like,
and thanks that it's over. Yeah.
Yeah. Since then, like that also gave me a little more confidence in myself and like vocal speaking, and I would still get like super nervous, but like speaking in front of youth group too, I gave my testimony like the week after, and it was cool.
Yeah.
But yeah,
those are great opportunities. Yeah, but they do stretch us sometimes, and it takes time and experience. But yeah, as the Lord gives you those opportunities, you take them and let Him just direct it the way He wants to use it. So
definitely gave me a lot of appreciation for pastors.
Yeah. Well, it's a privilege to be able to teach and preach and do those things, but there are times when, depending on what I'm talking about or teaching, the butterflies will show up in the stomach. Most of the time, I'm pretty good, but there are times when, and sometimes it's the unexpected. Where why am I so nervous for this one? I do this, every week, but yeah, it happens. It's natural. So, well, as a young adult, then Rachel, maybe what's something that you would want our church family to know about young adults in general here in 2025? What would be helpful for us to know about this, what I think is a really unique life stage and part of our church family?
Well, sometimes I feel like young adults might get overlooked sometimes. Just because we're like in between of being teenagers to going into adults. Like, I don't know, there's in between from 18 to 30-ish. I don't know. Yeah. People are still figuring out life even then. But I think one thing that I've been learning a lot, especially, is people really want community. They want to be involved. They just want to belong. And college students, sometimes we just think about like during the school year, but there's still people that stay like year round. Right. Like I have many friends that stay year round, and sometimes they kind of go off, like they kind of get overlooked or they get forgotten sometimes, which is kind of sad. But year round, just invite people to like have a meal, invite people to join in devotionals sometimes. Last summer I tried, like my friends and I got together a couple times and did devotionals, and it was really cool. But just being inviting and inclusive, and trying to include all age groups, and it is really cool because I was in a life group a couple years ago. And it was like I was the youngest. I was 19. Got bugged sometimes for that, for being the youngest in the group. And then the oldest was in her 80s and just the in-between ages. And it was cool to see like everyone coming together at their different points in life and having different perspectives.
Yeah.
But like including all the age groups in that. It was really cool.
Yeah. I love those opportunities when it's more intergenerational because I do think we learn from one another. Yes, some of our older saints are teaching us in a lot of ways. They've got a lot of life experience. They know their Bibles really well. But it doesn't just flow down from older to younger. It can flow the other direction. And I'm sure in that life group, even as a 19-year-old at the time, that you bring wisdom and that you bring insight to what you're talking about that maybe others hadn't thought about, or just a unique perspective. So yes, I echo that. I think it's important for us to think about how best to include our young adults. I love it when I see our young adults integrate into our life groups and things like that, and Sunday school classes, and and just worshiping together and things like that. Yeah. Well, I know you can't predict the future, Rachel, but where do you think God is directing your steps? If you can kind of look forward and guess a little bit, and maybe if God were to call you to do anything, go anywhere, where would you most want him to take you? What do you think the future is holding for you?
Well, that's a question that's been asked the last like 5 years. So one thing that I feel very called to is like camp ministry or children's ministry.
Yeah.
I've been trying to figure out like what age range, but I love working with little kids all the way up through high schoolers.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly, but something with the younger people is like I just feel called to that. Either at camp or in church. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, it's just cool seeing like their faces light up, especially the little kids. And even the older kids. Like I'm working with 9th grade girls currently, and it's cool to just see their faith growing and see like as they're grasping the understanding and the deeper understanding of the Bible. It's so beautiful and amazing just to see that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we'll continue to pray that the Lord clarifies that direction and call. You still got time. You still got some studies ahead of you and things like that. But that doesn't surprise me, Rachel, that the Lord's put both of those ministries, kids ministry and camp ministry, on your heart. And I think that would probably, from what I know about you and have gotten to know you, I that sounds like a pretty good fit. So. But who knows where the Lord's going to take you in the coming years here. But, well, good to kind of get to know you a little bit, Rachel, and hear a little bit about your story of coming to faith in Christ and how God's worked in your life since then. But on this podcast, on every episode, at the very end, there's a question I like to ask each person. And it's this. Here at our church, we talk about becoming deeply devoted followers of Jesus together. And so my question, Rachel, is maybe what's one thing that you have been blessed by lately that is deepening your devotion to Jesus?
One way that has been cool, or something that's been cool, is just like having people come up and talk to me and just include me in things. Like at church, I like going to early service, but I've been going to late service lately because I know a few more people there. Okay. And I love just staying and talking to people. Like even just last week, I was there till 12:30 talking to people. And just getting to know them better and checking in and like, hey, how's your week? How are you doing? How's your leg doing? Like, are you healing well? Things like that. Or just how can I pray for you? Is like summer's coming up, things like camp or yeah, it's been cool just talking to people and praying with them and getting to know them a little better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, after this episode comes out on Tuesday, maybe the following Sunday, you might have a few more people introducing themselves. Go find your photo on the board and figure out who you are and say, okay, that was the voice I heard on the podcast. So good. Yeah. Again, just what an important reminder that we, we don't just go to church together. We are the church together. And, it's so much about relationships and building relationships with one another. And yeah, you can't know everybody when your church is 200-300 people, but you can make some good connections. So good. Well, Rachel, it's been a real privilege to talk with you on this episode. And for those of you listening, that's going to do it for this episode of the Deeply Devoted podcast. Again, one of our future episodes here is going to be our Ask the Pastor episode, where you can send in some questions ahead of time. Pastor Jerry and I, we can try to tackle some of these questions, and whether that's something about the Bible or theology, or just even more get to know you questions, we would love to tackle some of those. You can either email the show at podcast@efcbemidji.org, or just contact the church office. And so my thanks to Rachel Eastling for being on the podcast today, for joining me. And folks, we're going to be back next Tuesday with another episode. And until then, have a great week, and thanks for listening.